It's not coming. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Teardrops Liquid Language of the Heart. My name is Patrice Thomas, and I am the creator of Teardrops. And what Teardrops is nothing but a social empowerment platform where we're becoming a stronger and a better you. And it's through the power of positivity. And on tonight, I am so excited on tonight. We're going to be talking about the season of vulnerability. And I want every listener on tonight to like and share and like, because this will be a season on tonight, a beginning of a season on tonight, where you have to look in the mirror and deal with you. I don't know about you, but it's not easy to be vulnerable in this day and time. And some of us really don't even know what vulnerability is. But when you begin to think about some areas in your life that you're vulnerable, tonight, just come on in, put your questions in the area, put your suggestions, put whatever you need to say on tonight. We invite you in. And on tonight, we're going to get started. We got some lovely people on our panel tonight. First of all, to start off on our panel, we have with us one of my longtime friends, Lisa Ford.
Hey, hello.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome.
Yes.
And he is the founder, along with the owner, along with everything of Olympic Health and Beauty Salon. And as we go on, she's going to tell you a little bit about that as we bring more of the people on. I don't want if you want to say, hey, I don't know if you want to say 2 seconds about your salon or if you want to wait until everyone else comes on.
Hi, my salon is open to everyone. Come on out and enjoy yourself. At Olympic Health and Beauty, there's something for you all the time. Beautiful atmosphere, nothing but God-filled atmosphere, serenity, where you will enjoy it. We'll give you more information in detail by the end of the day.
Awesome. And we have someone else. Next, we have that's coming aboard. We have Desiree Jones from Dose of Desi.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Pat.
All right.
You got 2 seconds. You want to tell us a little bit about Dose of Desi in 2 seconds?
Dose of Desi is videos to inspire you to be a better person with a God perspective.
Awesome. She did take her 2 seconds. Awesome. And the next person we have is Pastor Ryan O'Neill, the man of the cloth.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Yes, give the man of God a big hallelujah. So he is the Restoring Life Ministry. And right quick, you want to give us 2 seconds about the Restoring Life Ministry, Pastor?
Yes, good evening, everyone. I am the pastor and the founder of Restoring Life Ministry. We have been around for over 6 years now in the heart of Philadelphia, North Philly, Germantown Avenue, on between Susquehanna and Diamond. We are inside of Christ Memorial Baptist Church, and we're there every Sunday at 9:30 a.m. We have a Facebook page and our YouTube page up as well, where you can see more about us, where we are repairing hearts and restoring lives.
Awesome. We have next on our panel, my only begotten sonship, Randy Thomas. Awesome. And Randy Thomas is from Wake Up with E at B Square 2 podcast. And I'm sure I done messed that up with my own sons. I'm sure I messed it up. I'm totally
You absolutely did, and it's a shame. Your only begotten son shows that you don't watch my podcast or my videos, but that's okay. I still love you.
So you
I watched them, Randy.
Thank you. Just because you're a true friend.
That was a vulnerable moment. Oh, you watch it, great. So you want to tell us a little bit about Wake Up with E?
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Ernest, and I am the voice behind Wake Up with E. Wake Up with E is a daily, almost like my cousin, a motivation to get you started on your day. It's like a B12 shot first thing in the morning, get you started, to get you motivated, or to tell you about yourself before your day starts so you have the whole day to get yourself together. We are a mixture between prayers, scriptures, funny stories about myself, and since we're talking about vulnerability, this season we're talking about vulnerable areas in my life.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. We actually have one more panelist who's trying to get on, so she might be popping on in Facebook or whatever. But that's Kimberly Matthews. So let's give her a round of applause too. Awesome. So we're going to actually get started. We're going to jump
Oh,
right on.
I think she's on. Let's see. Kim, is that you?
That is me. Hey. Hi.
So Kim, you
Hey.
seconds about yourself, just real quick. I know you're doing something, but I don't think I had the right name of it.
No, okay. My name is Kimberly Matthews, and at the time I had a waist training line. It was called Curvations. I no longer have it. Once the pandemic hit, everything kind of just, got shifted. But it should be back up and running like sometime next year. I'm trying to, launch it back.
Okay, awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm ready to jump in. I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready to jump in. So I'm going to give you, since you guys say I didn't give you any questions and I didn't prompt you for this, so let's just go free willy on tonight. How about that? So I'm going to start off with a quote.
Well, that's what we expected with you. So,
Never know which way I'm going to travel. So I'm going to start off with a quote on tonight. And it says, with vulnerability, you're never so vulnerable than when you trust someone. But honorably, if you cannot trust, neither can you love or have joy. Think about it for a moment. You're never so vulnerable, but when you trust somebody. But if you cannot trust, neither can you find love or can you find joy. Just think about it for a moment. And then something else says, vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, and creativity. It is the source of hope, accountability, and authentication. And when you think about it, vulnerability does yield authentication, because a lot of times if you're not vulnerable, can you be authentic? Come on, jump in. If y'all think y'all gonna be quiet up here tonight, you got on the wrong platform. Tell them, Lisa, we about to quiz you guys to death.
Absolutely.
So think about it for a moment. Let me just throw out this question. What does vulnerability mean to you? Because we know in every age or every level or every stage in life, vulnerability seems to mean something different to everybody. So where you are now, you may not think vulnerability is the same when you get to my precious age. So, but now where you are, what do you think about vulnerability? Just think for a moment. What does it mean to you? And are you vulnerable?
Mm-hmm.
We're not only talking about relationships between man and woman, but we're talking about sister relationships, brother and sister relationship. We're talking about relationships with anybody that you have a relationship that you're connected with, because there's a sense of vulnerability that goes on with every relationship that you have. So what does vulnerability mean to you? Are you vulnerable? Have you been vulnerable?
I can definitely say yes.
Okay. You want to elaborate a little bit?
Yes. Vulnerability is okay. It's a great topic. Actually, for me, I can relate so much because I'm vulnerable almost every day. I feel open. I always feel like I'm being exposed. But it gave me the opportunity to trust God. I started learning that once I was vulnerable with God, I discovered his healing. There's a lot of things that I didn't know was inside of me until I got vulnerable. Sometimes we don't we don't know what's going on with us until we hit rock bottom. And then we start to act out some things and we like, oh, I didn't know that I was into this. I didn't know that I was into that. So sometimes it will introduce us to our weakness. But that's when we have to be loyal. You know what I'm saying? That's when vulnerability will test our loyalty. You know what I'm saying? What will we do in a state of weakness? Will we fold or will we stand 10 toes down? And like I said, that's when I started discovering God's healing.
That's good. So her vulnerability made her to be, I like one thing she said, exposed and open.
Mm.
So that when you think about it, vulnerability is about being open. But the problem with being open, we don't like to be open because now people begin to know who we are. And that's where the fear comes in at. Because I've just opened myself up to people to know who we are. Now are they going to hurt me?
Okay. Someone is asking the question, should you be vulnerable with everyone?
That's a good question.
Good question.
I don't think you should be vulnerable with everyone. I think you have to be very strategic and use wisdom when you're being vulnerable to everyone. But however, I feel as though that the generation before us did not teach us how to be vulnerable. They taught us how to hide everything. So what you're seeing right now is a generation which, I guess me and Ryan are no longer that young people, like that millennial, because we have a whole generation after us. But I think you started to see a generation of people become more open and honest because they've been hiding hurt, they've been hiding pain, they've been hiding things that's been done to them. And we've been kind of taught to just kind of sweep it under the carpet, don't tell anybody about it. So what I think we're seeing now is a generation of people that have been is vulnerable on steroids. They just telling all their business all the time because they're looking for someone that they can not only just relate to, because everybody wants to, we live in this society now where social media says you either have to be this way or you have to be this way. You either getting that money or you broke. And I feel like people are just trying to find out where do they fit in on the spectrum. I'm not getting the money the way social media is, but I'm not broke either. You know what I mean? I got relationship problems, but where do I fit in at on the spectrum? So I think we're seeing vulnerability on steroids, and I think it's hurting more people than it is helping. And that's just my little 2 cents. Go ahead, Pastor. Give us the pastor.
I agree. Actually, really agree with both Kim and with Ernest. The thing is I think if I could equate vulnerability to anything, it would definitely be one word, which is safety. When I recently got into a space where I could actually be vulnerable with people that I really, really care about, Ernest will tell you right now that we've had multiple conversations about, oh, you only show this side of you to the one person, you show this side of you to another person, and he was with me in moments where I literally just switched up who I was, not because I was being a different person, but just kind of my attitude and the way that I dealt with people. It wasn't until I had to really deal with myself to expose me for who I am and to see the hurt and the things that I was dealing with that actually made me realize it wasn't that I couldn't be who I wanted to be around everyone. It was that I didn't trust everyone to just be me. And to not be the pastor and to not be the one that stands behind the pulpit or that serves the bishop. I can't just be Ryan. So when I got to a space where I could finally just be Ryan, I realized that I could have more vulnerability with those that really, really care about me, to moments where I cry with them, and I don't really cry with people. So that's kind of what it is for me.
It's very interesting that you both said that, because one of the things I was listening to, is whether you were talking about in the old age or back in the day, we were taught to hide our feelings. We were not allowed to share because it would seem like to be a form of weakness. And then when you get around someone and you show the real you, as Pastor O'Neill was saying, then they begin to judge you and you look at somebody differently. So would you say that vulnerability will bring about healing at some point? Because we're all bottled up. It sounds like, with the younger generation here, which I'm so happy to see this panel, and get a different perspective. And maybe we can tap into what some of the things that are going on in society, why they're killing, why they're shooting, why they're doing all these things. Are they bottling up their feelings? Are they not able to get it out? What do you think? Does vulnerability brings about healing? And do you think it'll help?
Uh, I guess I should jump in since I've been the
Yes,
quiet one.
yeah, go ahead.
I absolutely agree with the people who have spoke before me. To be honest and frank, before pandemic, a lot of us was wearing masks. It's just that pandemic made us put on a mask. We've been taught, especially for those who might have been raised in church, we've been taught almost to be actors. And to be very frank with you, a lot of us got to eat God without the physical reward, because we've been taught to say, "Oh, praise the Lord, I'm fine," and down inside you ready to kill yourself. Down inside you feel all these things. And I think our generation is just like, you know what? I'm tired of waking up every day wanting to run in the street, but I can't tell nobody. And I think that's why our generation anyway is open to therapy, and even to the point of vulnerability. There's some people that I can be extremely vulnerable with, but those are people that I know that have proven themselves to be trustworthy,
Mm.
because you can't pour your secrets out to everybody, because some people you think is safe, and then it comes back later on they are just not appropriate or not safe in your life.
Hmm.
I like a couple of
Absolutely.
things you said. Proven. That was one of the things that you said. Another thing that I like that Kim talked about, the healing. When she became to be vulnerable, there was a healing that went in. One of the questions I do have is, it sounds to me that vulnerability brings in liberation and acceptance. So,
Mhm.
and I think those are key words when you deal with vulnerability. One of the things you guys just said that maybe Lisa and I are close in the same age, if not the same age. I think in our generation, yeah, some of us was taught to put things under the carpet. You know, you can be going haywire in a house, but when you walk outside, you got to look like you worth $1 million when you don't even have 2 cents in your pocket. So
Amen.
a lot of that, I think, and I think what we did is we transfer that spirit onto our children, into the next generation. So, but it doesn't mean that I believe in our generation that we weren't healed either. And, you know, I believe also in our generation, we carried a lot of stuff around, but now we're at a place in our life that, hey, we just don't care. You know, we are at a place in our life that liberation has come for us, and acceptance of who we are has come for us. So the whole point of what people want us to be at this particular time really is something that we look at and be like, for real, that's really what you want me to be? How about you accept me for who I am?
Mhm.
And I think it started in our generation, because I have a lot of friends that I hang out with that, you know, we had a rough time, but now we're at a point that, hey, I am who I am. And either you're going to accept me for who I am and be my friend, or I guess I will have to walk alone without you being my friend. So, you know, and vulnerability comes to the point that, hey, I got hurt. Hey, I don't like you. Hey, you know, I'm vulnerable in this particular area. So I need help in this area because I'm just not feeling help in this area. One of the things that I'm very vulnerable about, I have
But you know,
problems.
sometimes it's not even so much being vulnerable because I'm looking for help. It's just also I just want to be vulnerable because I just want to be open. Sometimes when we're telling people we don't want, and I think that's a problem too. Just because I tell you what's going on with me does not mean I'm looking for a answer, a solution.
Mhm.
I don't want your 2 cents. I just want to be able to be open and honest
It's
about who I
precious.
am. I don't even want you to respond half of the
Mhm.
time. It's funny because, you know, I mean, I know everyone on this line I know very personally. Desi's my cousin, Ryan's my close friend, Kim is my sis, and me and Kim kind of grew up together in the same in church. Obviously, we all grew up in church together, so we're all church kids. But we talk about it. I think Ryan and I, we've all talked about it in the last couple of years. We really didn't become friends until we were like, well, I'm 36, until maybe we were like 30, 31. So even though I've known Kim for 35 years, I can't really truly say that she's been my friend except for 3 or 4 years. Because
Right.
though we were young, we were still taught you keep your business to yourself. We had to act a certain type of way. I don't really count Kim as my sister until I was able to tell her some of my deepest secrets, because her and Ryan, I hope that they can deal with being tortured, because if you want to know what's going on with me, these are the people you talk to. And I don't feel as though we had an authentic friendship until I was able to be honest and tell them some deep stuff, because, again, as we're taught to put on these masks, but in order to have a real genuine friendship or relationship or any type of ship with anybody, you have to get to the place where you're vulnerable and open.
Let me just say
Can
something.
I want to, oh, go ahead,
Go ahead,
Desi.
Kim. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to stay on that topic real quick about how when we grew up in church, right? Uh, Growing up, I struggled with the church world, because I was taught, like how he said, we were taught to hide behind a filter. And that filter for me was the filter of religion. I felt like if I looked the part or whatever, I didn't have to address certain issues that was inside of me. You get what I'm saying? I didn't have to address that I was into this or I was struggling with this, So I felt like if I can put on a filter of religion, I was okay. And I think that that's why a lot of people, especially in the church world, we struggle with being vulnerable, because God can't work through a filter. He needs us to take off everything, like Desi said, the mask. We have to take off the mask in order for God to start healing us, in order for us to talk to God and say, hey, God, this is what I got going on. I need you. That's the best time to surrender, when we're vulnerable. So I just wanted to touch bases on that. I think a lot of times we struggle with vulnerability because we hide behind religion.
That's good stuff. That's good stuff. But I want to throw in, and Desi, I'm going to here. I want to throw in, along with hiding behind religion, I want to throw in a point that, have we learned really to love and accept our own self?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times we adjust masks on our face because we really don't know who we are.
Absolutely.
And it's not until you accept who you are, not who people have designed you to be, not who people call you to be, but who do you know who you are? And when I say who you are, I think on the last episode we talked about who you are. I'm not talking about the point that you're a female. I'm not talking about the point that you're a mother. I'm not talking about the point that you're a student. I'm not talking about the point that you're a pastor. Do you really know who you are? Do you know what you like? Do you know what you dislike? Do you know what makes your toenails curl? Do you know those type of things? Because that's who you are. Do you know, when I'm doing self-care, what my pleasure is? That's knowing who you are. And it's a lot of times we're vulnerable in different areas because we haven't become acquainted with who I am. You can't enjoy yourself. One of the areas that I had for me, I had to find out who I am. A lot of times, and Lisa used to always say this to me in high school. She just thought I knew who I was. I didn't know who I was. I was trying to find out who I was. But I also come from a family that tells you put this mask on, irregardless of what's going on. And it wasn't until I didn't want to adjust the mask anymore, because the mask was making me swallow up. It was making me sweat. It was making me not know who I was really. But when I got to know who I was, I love me. And because I love me, I don't care about being vulnerable with other people, because there's nothing that you can do to me to dampen me now. And I think that's the source of it. We have to get to the point until we learn how to love and accept ourselves, our authentic self, not the self that somebody told you that you think you were. Because you got people who are 70 and 80 years old who still don't even know who they are.
Absolutely. It's very good. I really enjoyed your comments, Kim. And we have done that for so many years. We try to look the part, but we're not the part. And if we look the part, then we don't have to answer all of the other questions that comes along with it. I remember a friend of mine said that their parents was a pastor at some point, and their parents, and they said to him, your parents made you to be lies, cheats, and sneaks. I thought that, at first I thought that was the worst thing ever. But when you looked at it, that's what it was, because they had to play a certain role. They could not be themselves. They tried to be something that they weren't. and then they ended out their whole lives. This is what they were trying to do, trying to find themselves, and never really would have been able to accomplish that because it's been ingrained in them. And we talk about things that happens when you're young, and it takes a while to get that out. But if you don't have that support system, then sometimes it takes forever to get there. But we know God is able to do that. So with that, I wanted to just ask the question to you, to the panel. Is there bravery in vulnerability? What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because as we've all discussed so far, there's a lot of things that kind of cause us to not be vulnerable. And if I could probably even label a lot of the things that we've had to deal with, I call it abuse, whether you're looking at it physically, emotionally, and mentally. We find ourselves in so many situations where we are required to repress ourselves and repress who we are, who we feel like we should be, how we ought to walk, and things like that. But then it takes a brave person to just simply stand out. If you even want to take it to scripture, if you look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, it took bravery out of everyone, to include the Jews that were taken captive, to just not bow their knees to that idol. It took bravery to do those things. So it takes bravery in general just to be different and say, I am who I am. And it's okay that I can walk into a room and wear colors that don't match. It's okay that, I can walk into a room and wear whatever it is that I want to wear, or be how I want to be, and still be me and still live my life. That in and of itself just takes bravery.
But you're so true. If I could just piggyback off of that too, just also thinking about it, I always reflect over my grandmother's life. She lived to be in her 90s, right? So a lot of times she used to make us do a lot of things that drove me crazy. The one biggest thing she used to do is she used to iron my jeans and put them hard creases in there.
Yes.
Oh, it used to drive me crazy. And it didn't take me until jeans are not supposed to have hard creases. But what I remember is she always wanted us to look a certain type of way, and even ways that it wasn't me, but it came from a place where she grew up in a time where, because of her color and because of her gender, she was already categorized not good enough. So she always had to feel as though she had to meet up to what society wants, just to be accepted, just to have a business, just to be Catherine Dean Fonville, because she grew up in a time where being yourself, just being the color of who you are, wasn't good enough. And I think that we have never healed from that place. So that kind of thinking gets passed down from generation to generation to generation. And what you're seeing now is saying, listen, as Ryan said, I can have all the colors in the world. Please don't do that. But if you want to decide that you want to do that, it's okay. It's okay to wear whatever color you want. It's okay to be who you are, because there's a world. And somehow the Christian world has to figure that out too. We got to figure out how to say, yes, you're different. You are still welcome in this place. This is what we agree. This is what we believe, but you're still welcome. And that is what we haven't figured that out yet, because the second we say, yes, you are this, then we automatically accept whatever it is, if that makes sense, if I'm saying that kind of correctly. The second somebody says, well, I'm a lesbian, the first thing we like to say is, no, you're not. You're a woman of God. But no, this woman really is a lesbian. She's going home to her lesbian lover, and I think that we have associated, if we agree with that, then we are accepting the sin that they're in. But it reminds me of the story of Lazarus. When Lazarus died, Jesus said, show me where you laid him. You know what I mean? If we don't show Jesus the vulnerable part of us, the place that's dead, the place that needs healing, the place that needs restoration, how's he going to ever heal us? He going to go to the wrong place. You know what I mean? So we have to be okay with saying, yep, you're a whole lesbian. Come on in and let's see what we can do. Let's have a conversation. Let's see what got you to that place. And I could be wrong, and I could be setting everybody on fire, but I believe that's what I believe.
Let me just kind of
until you catch them. So if you ain't got them, you you definitely won't be able to do anything with them. But I do have a twofold question that actually left.
Wait a minute, Lisa, before you go in, Desi's been trying to jump in for a while now.
It's okay. I'll wait my turn. No, you're fine. Just to kind of piggyback off of things that have been said. For me, I know I have not been my true authentic self. And for a long time, I didn't even know who that was or who I am. And I'm really still in that journey of trying to figure out who is Desiree. Like, let's take Desi out the way. And I know everyone knows me as Desi. That's always been my nickname. And that's fine. I prefer to be called Desi. But who's Desiree? Like, who is this 30-year-old woman? And I know for me, finding or going on this journey came through, y'all know I'm a big advocate, therapy. If you are mentally, okay, let me say this. We live in a generation where, well, especially in the Black community and in the Black church, where therapy and mental health is not accepted. But what's amazing to me is that we accept all other type of sicknesses, but we don't accept the sickness of mental health. And so we encourage you to take your medicine for your heart and your liver and your diabetic medicine. But if there's a person who's mentally ill and has to take medicine for emotions, then we just pretend that doesn't exist. And the thing is, I think that's why we have a hard time discipling people, because it's with the mind. Because the Bible tells us in Romans to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And if we are not renewed, we cannot be whole. And I know for me, and I'm going to wrap it up, for me, vulnerability came through hard conversation. God sent an elder in my church. She now moved, but God sent an elder in my church, and she literally for 2.5 years, and even to this day, every time she sees me, we have hard conversations. There's never been a time where she has not been in my face. There's never been a time where she had to point me to the cross. So if you're not willing to have hard conversations, then we're not really willing to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
That's a good point. And I want to jump in with a question before Lisa does. I don't know if she was going to pull the question that came up. So there was a question that came up. And it says, how do we get to the point that we don't have to be vulnerable? And then it says, why do we need to express vulnerability? Is that really what it is? And that came from Chris, son, your friend, my other son. So he wants to know, do we really need to get to the point to be vulnerable? Do we need to be vulnerable?
I think yes, but just not with everybody. Every person, like the scripture tells us that that when you express your faults, or you confess your sins, so to speak, one to another, when you talk about what it is that you're dealing with, the scripture actually tells us specifically, don't condemn these people, be there to pick them up. If your brother falls, you have to be there to pick them up. And so, but you can't express to everyone what your falling was, because the truth is, if we did not need those instructions to actually pick our brother up, then we would not have issues with being vulnerable with people, specifically in the church, because we don't know how to pick everyone up. I just said this, I think on Sunday I was preaching, and I said people have hidden themselves so well from who they are, and that they don't even want to acknowledge that they used to do the things that we are experiencing today. So you have to be in a place where you do have to trust someone. You have to trust someone, but invulnerability comes from being hurt, being cast down, and from having a moment of vulnerability and actually being kicked while you were down.
I'm going to go ahead. No, Kim, go ahead. You first, because I can tell Chris offline what I want to tell him. But go ahead.
To answer Chris's question, I feel like if there's no vulnerability, there's no power. And taking it to a spiritual part, I feel like Christ couldn't have had the strength to die unless he had a reason to. And he had a purpose. And to fulfill that purpose, he had to be vulnerable. He had to feel everything that we would one day feel. He was tempted without sin. So every time we're vulnerable, it's never meant for us. It's always meant for the next person that God's going to align us with, so they can say, well, how did you get healed from that? Because that's the same thing I struggle with. Mm-hmm. I don't want to talk to you if you've never been through what I've been through. Mm-hmm. You're not going to help me heal. Yeah. So I feel like you have to be vulnerable. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not about us. You know, Christ died for us, you know, because he felt the stuff that we felt. He knew what we were going to go through. And sometimes we may have to suffer for the next person.
Mm-hmm. I'm going I'm going to piggyback off of that too to answer Chris's question, and I'm just going to go in a different direction because him and I talk about this all the time. Vulnerability will challenge the relationship that you're in. If you say that you love someone and you say you want to be with someone, you need vulnerability. Will you love me through the tough stuff? Will you love me through the deep secrets? Will you love me with the things that don't make me look attractive? And I think me and Chris talk about all the time. It's like Desi said, you have to have the rough and the hard conversations. And first of all, in order for you to be vulnerable with that person, first, is that person worth it? That's the first thing you got to say. Is this person worth it? Is this relationship worth it? Is this person worth me telling my deepest, darkest secrets to? And yes, you have to be vulnerable to test to see if this is real love, if this is a relationship that's going to stand the test of times. And I think, we don't talk about that too. Relationships, you got to have those tough conversations. You got to see if this is going to stand up because we can have a great time. We can go out and have dinner. That's not testing your relationship when everything is going good, when you're giving someone flowers and you're going out and you have a good time. But when I have to start revealing some things to you, that is when we're going to see where the chips may fall. And then what we have to do, me, Tim, and me and Ryan talk about this all the time with dating. You don't tell everybody everything at the beginning. Okay. So if you're dating somebody, you don't go on the first date and say, I just got out of a crazy relationship with, what I mean? The first date should not even be about that. But what ends up happening is as you begin to spend time with someone, see, I could accept something from someone 60 days later than when I first meet someone, if that makes sense, right? So when I first meet you, I'm not going to tell you all my deepest, darkest secrets because I don't know you, you don't know on me. And if I told you all my stuff, you would think I'm halfway crazy, which I am, but you don't need to know that. But after I spend time with you and I get in a relationship with you, then I can be able to, there's a relationship there. There's a trust there. Then I can be able to express some things to you and you might be able to receive them a little bit better than you would when you first meet them. So vulnerability is needed. It is the key. It will help you stand the test of time of your relationships.
Can I just say something? Because I just, everyone's just making me just want to just share. I want to just kind of piggyback off what's been said, and that is kind of what to Ernest Randy said, which is friendship or any relationship, it's an investment. And I have to ask myself, are you worth the investment? Because one thing I learned through a situation was because I'm such an open heart. When I'm the type of person, I had to tell my accountability and my therapist, when I'm with you, I'm with you. That means you get every contact, you get every connection. That means anything I have is yours. And maybe because I'm an only child, I see my friends as siblings. So it's like what I got, I'm going to ride with you. However, if I'm against you, the Lord never made you. That's just me. He never made you. What? He made who? Not you. And so I'm being, look, we're being vulnerable. Y'all said be vulnerable. Here we are. God never created you. And so one thing I had to learn was because I am a limited commodity, because there is a treasure in my earthen vessel, and because we only have a limited amount of time. I mean, I don't like talking about death, but the truth of the matter is we ain't here long. So because of that, I have to be mindful and wise of who I invest in. And when we think of relationships, whether it's, dating relationships or any type of relationship as an investment, the question is, are you worth it?
I think right here, this comment is very much, I want to interject this from Minister Carew. She says, there's liberty and freedom in being vulnerable. Most times people are just looking for a safe place to go, but you really should use wisdom because unfortunately, everyone does not have your best interests in mind, but God always has someone that you can confide in. And I think this is what you all have been expressing, how you feel, and that yes, vulnerability is a place where we need to be because there's good therapy, as Desi say. That's just good therapy at that point. But you have to be selective in who you're talking to, and then and it brings out that bravery and it helps the healing, and it's going to make you a better you. It's going to make me a better me, and then we can function in authenticity and not in fakeism. That's my word, fakeism.
I think
I
that's
like it.
good. One thing that I believe that God does bring people in for you to confide in. I most definitely believe that. But that's a challenge. That's not something that you automatically get. Even when you pray about it and you see God's face, it's still a challenge because God can give you Desi as the one for you to confide in, but maybe the time is not now. And with everything that we do as far as God is concerned, there's a time and a season element that goes along with it. But it doesn't mean that Desi doesn't need somebody now. So I believe that wholeheartedly, but I believe a lot of things that we do, we have to trust in God's ability and God's wisdom and who he did send. Because the person that you confide in can mess up too. But because they mess up, doesn't mean that God didn't send them. Does it mean that that's not the person that God has called to confide in you? It doesn't mean that they were just vulnerable at that particular time and they fell. So I think all of that we have to consider when we talk about it, and then consider yourself. I'm a firm believer when we talk about vulnerability, you have to accept yourself also. You have to love yourself also. You have to also deal with the mistakes that you have done in the past because there's nobody out here that didn't make any mistakes. Then there's nobody out here that does not have a past. So we all do. And everybody's past is not flowery. It's not pretty. Doesn't have vibrant colors. Some of them is black, dull, and whole. So we have to also understand that also, and we have to be willing to trust and to put our trust in that person that God has called for us to confide in, and don't throw them away when they mess up. That's something to think about when we think about vulnerability, along with learning to love ourselves. We all say that we love ourselves. Learning to love yourself is a process. It's a process. We can all jump up and say, yeah, I love myself. When I look in the mirror, I love myself. No, it's a process. Do you love yourself when you make a mistake? Can you forgive yourself as you forgive other people? Because that's some things that we can't do. Do you love yourself rather you big, round, fat, or rather you skinny as a pencil? It's still you. Do you love yourself? Do you love yourself when you have reached your goals in life and when you didn't? Do you still love yourself? Because if you never learn how to love yourself, you can't adequately love anybody else. And you can't adequately be vulnerable with anyone else because you're still dealing with that thing on the inside of you, that pain, that hurt on the inside of you. And sometimes, as I say all the time, to thy own self be true. And until you can get to yourself and you can look yourself in the mirror and be true with yourself, you're not really ready to be vulnerable with anyone else.
I have a question for the panel. How many of you all, and this is for me because I've asked myself this question as well, are we vulnerable to God? And if so, do we have selective vulnerability to God, or are we open?
Honestly, not scripture wise, honestly, within
Yes,
yourself.
honestly, because I can give you the scriptures.
We can
Look,
all put those scriptures.
I'm
We can
not
all
right
pull
here.
out
I can pull out all the scriptures in the world.
we can all take a
But
text right about now and go through it. But
okay,
honestly, this is an honest question.
this is an honest-
Accepting yourself.
I used to be selective with my vulnerability. It was only, you know, certain things will make me go to God, you know, but now I go to God for every single thing. But it took me to hit rock bottom to get there. It took me to use all of the resources that I had and nothing was available. So I had no choice but to go back to the source. I was in a place in my life where I lost everything. I was homeless. I didn't have anything, like nothing. Um, Friends, I couldn't call them. Family, it was just so much going on, and that was that was like my awakening to say, you can't depend on these things. You got to depend on me. And I found myself like in total surrenderance to God, as to where I'm like, yo, I need to go to God for every single thing now. So that way I won't have to deal with this later. So yeah, I used to be selective, but now it's everything. It's even. I know people laugh at me when I say this, but like even like going to certain stores, I'm like, God, do I need to go here? Do I need this person to make my food? Like like anything. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just so into like everything is God. What do you want me to do? Because I've been vulnerable, and like I said, I'm always open. I'm always vulnerable. So that's just my personal story.
I think that it took me to go through a really dark depression stage to have to realize that not only was I not vulnerable with God, but I didn't really trust Him. And it
Mm.
wasn't just not trusting Him.
I felt
The
that.
hardest part for me was realizing that it had nothing to do with my finances. It had nothing to do with my bills not being paid. It had nothing to do about the times that I may or may not have had food in the house. It had everything to do with the fact that I actually held God accountable for allowing me to get hurt. And it wasn't until I could be
Mm.
honest with myself. I'll never forget it. I was sitting on the side of my bed and I said, God, why are my days so dark? Why do I have to cry every day of the week? And I literally felt Him come sit next to me and say, when you decide to trust me and stop holding me accountable for what I did not do, it freed me, because I had to really look at myself and look at all of the places that were really hurting and places that I had completely covered, to say, God, you're right. I don't trust you with that. And it didn't, and that was when Proverbs 3:5 came to me, and it became real. Trust in the Lord with all, not a part of it, not the parts that feel good, but even the parts that hurt. All, all of your heart. So yeah, we do. Sometimes we can't be vulnerable with God because it hurts. It really does.
I think for me, it's honestly, I'm still learning how to be open with Him. I'm just going to be straight up. That's why I'm so grateful for my discipler, because she's helping me really be authentic. I think for me anyway, I felt like, I guess for me growing up in church, that I felt like everyone just knew I knew what to do. And I remember asking somebody, how do I have quiet time? And the person said, well, you should know, you were raised in church. And I'm like, but I'm just sitting here and I feel like I need to be here for an hour and I'm bored. And I prayed for everything I could think of. And I thought it was 30 minutes, but it was only 5. And now I don't know what to do for the rest of this hour. And so what I've had to learn is not to pray like the person, the Christian I thought I was. Because I think a lot of times we think we're this mighty, strong Christian. And then you realize that even though you're 30 and you've been in church, you're still in diapers. You are a whole babe. And you think you apt to teach, and you like, let's go. And you're like, no, I'm like boo boo, like goo goo gaga. And I think for me, it's walking through that purpose of discipleship. I feel like we've been kind of skirting around it, but no one's really said it. Part of vulnerability is discipleship.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be discipled, one, in the things of God, but even as humans, like our parents, quote unquote, disciple us. They train us. And I think that's the same thing with our spiritual walk. We have to be trained how to be vulnerable. Jesus, God, I'm upset. I don't like it. And I think we've been told, oh, don't tell him that. No, he wants, the thing is, he already know it. So you might as well tell him, Jesus, I'm mad. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I am mad. And I think if we learn to do that, have healthy communication, we'll be much happier people.
Awesome.
All right, Brother Randy.
I am on the side. It's funny. I'm between Kim, Ryan, and Desi. It depends on the different areas of my life and what I'm dealing with. That's the honest truth. When everything is going well, I am very vulnerable, very open with God. When I have troubled areas, I either don't speak to Him about it, or I'll say, or it kind of also goes back to the question that you asked, Mom, right before this. Do you really love yourself? And to be honest with you, I struggle with that on a week by week, month by month, quarter by quarter. I struggle with that. Do I really love myself? Do I love every aspect of myself? For me, I feel like I feel like I've grown. My whole life has been dictated. Everything I do, from the way I wear my hair to the way, what type of job I have, to the way I dress for church, the way I dress for home, it's all been dictated by someone else, by people who they know better for me, or they know how things should be, or because of where you came from, or because of who your family, who your church is, you should do things a certain type of way. And when I try to get that freedom to do things that I think it's for me, there's a lot of backlash. Why would you do such a thing? You look silly, or why can't you be more masculine? Why are you so flamboyant? Like, there's so many areas in my life where I'm constantly getting told to do something different, that it begins to make me struggle with, do I really love myself? So no, I'm not vulnerable with God all the time. I'm praying about things that people think I should pray about. Lord, make me more like this. Lord, make me more acceptable to do this. Lord, make me not make someone angry. Like, why do I trigger people? Like, I'm constantly told your light's too light. You're too loud. You want too much. You want too much change. But that's who I am as an individual. And I'm constantly being drawn in, saying that's too much. They can't handle. They can't handle. They can't handle. So no, I don't get vulnerable with God. I usually end up praying with people. I usually pray about things that bother other people, that really make me happy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I constantly have to always reset myself and tell myself I am fearfully and wonderfully made. There is nothing wrong with me. God made me the way I am. The problem is not me, it's them. I have to constantly reinforce that self to be okay with the fact of being vulnerable, who I am, and praying about what I want. I hope that was not all around the place, but that's...
It wasn't. That was awesome. So Lisa, the question to you that you threw out to everyone else.
Oh, well, I was going to follow up with that as well, because I look at it sometimes as, yeah, I'm not totally vulnerable to God, or I have not, and I'm learning to do that. As Desi said, I'm learning to do that. I was thinking as you all were talking, and that society sometimes play a real part. And this came to mind as you were talking. How often when we go on a job interview, we dress a certain way? We do certain things because we want to make an impression on that employer that it may not necessarily be ourselves. So we have to put on a front. I know our pastor was saying the other day, sometimes what we do is we stereotype, and we, when you have an African American person who speaks eloquently, we have a tendency of labeling them, saying, oh, well, you're trying to talk or act like a Caucasian. What does that mean? Well, and so what happens is society begins to put us in a state where we don't admit our vulnerabilities. We are skillfully and wonderfully made. God made us just the way we are. He wanted us just the way we are. But yet and still, we don't go to him, and we don't take certain things. We become selective. So yes, I have been, and I am selective about some of the things that I take to God, because either I don't know whether I don't want to rumple his feathers, and as he said, we weren't allowed to say certain things to God, like, oh no, you don't say that. You don't tell God you're angry with him because of whatever. But no. He knows what's on your heart. He wants to hear you talk about it. And sometimes when you begin to say it, when you hear it, that's the art of learning and getting past things. We talk about reading the Bible, and yes, we can read it, but sometimes it resonates a little better when you hear it. So say it out loud, speak it to your mind, let it get embedded inside of you. And you have to, this has to be a consistent thing. We're not consistent in being vulnerable to God. So therefore, we can't be, we're not consistent with anything else in our lives. And so consistency is going to play a real part. However, yes, I myself have selective vulnerability when it comes to God. So I have selective vulnerability to you all. Just think about it. So yeah, we do put on that mask, as Desi said. We've always had it on, but now COVID has caused us to really put it on. And guess what? I talk so much to myself under my mask, and I because it's a cover up. It's a cover up, and that's what we have been doing. So we need to be vulnerable, but we need to first be 100% vulnerable to God, I believe. And once we can do that, we'll find it's easier to get through a lot of life's issues and crisis.
I agree with that too, because I feel like if you're not vulnerable to God and to yourself first, you won't be able to have any successful relationships, period. I find myself struggling sometimes because I'm a little two-faced with the vulnerability when it comes to relationships with people and dating, because I want you to be vulnerable with me. I'm gonna ask you the tough questions, but don't ask me the tough questions. Don't ask me. I will tell you when I'm ready, or I'm very selective about what I want to tell people. And I feel as though it doesn't work that way. You got to be either all in or you got to be all out. And that's my two-piece too. You got you got to be in or out. The Bible talk about you either got to be hot or cold. You can't be lukewarm because you
can't be black or white.
Yeah. So I feel like
you got to be black or white. You can't be gray.
Can't be gray. And gray
can't be gray.
Can't be gray. You gotta,
Well, I think everyone for the talk on tonight, I think it's just been fabulous. I don't know about Lisa, but you've opened up many things that we can bring you guys back as a panel for some other areas that we really need to discuss. And I think one of the biggest areas is loving ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's just not for your generation. So I want to put it out there because I know a lot of times in your generation, we've been opinionated. And, one thing Lisa said, we dress up for interviews to go to impress the employer. But I think a lot of times we take that literally in church, and we're not really dressing up for the people in church. We're dressing up for God. Mm-hmm. And I think you have to get to the point until you get totally delivered for people. And that's not something that easily happens. Mm-hmm. So, we say to the next generation, you have to be totally delivered from people, but you still have people everywhere, pastors, bishops, apostles, and everything else who are not delivered from people. People are a hard commodity to, I love you, Pastor Ryan. People are hard commodities to be delivered from. And it's not, and I'm going to keep saying it, it's not until you understand who you are and begin to love yourself that you can be authentic, number one, and you can be vulnerable. And I can truly say that because there was a time that I struggled with loving myself. I didn't like who I was. So I never asked God about who I was. I never thought that I was effective in what I did, no matter what people said. I never thought was effective. And I used to be like, why is everybody always coming to me with their problems? What in the world is going on? And yet they don't see what's on the inside of me. But it wasn't until I began to see God, myself in the eyes of God, that I began to understand who I was, my uniqueness. I understand that things about me trigger other people because of the uniqueness that God had birthed inside of me. When I began to realize that, I don't mind being a trigger. I don't mind being someone who is outspoken as far as that's concerned, because of those characteristics and traits that God has placed on the inside of me. And he gave me that boldness for a reason. So I think when you get to the point until, in some people's eyes, I'm considered to be a rebel. That used to bother me. Now I'm okay with it. Somebody got to be a rebel and somebody got to be quiet. Somebody has to be able to help other people, and there's other people who don't. So if that is what God has placed inside of me, for me to be a change maker, it is what it is. But you have to get to that point until you're able to accept that, and everyone cannot accept their traits, their giftings. We can't. So what happens is we become stumped where we are, and we close up. And we go in our corner and we don't do anything, and we hide how we feel. So the gifts, skills, and ability that God's put inside of them, we don't use them. Because if I use them, I'm different than the next person. Now I'm going to be talked about, and I'm not strong enough to handle the words that's going to be talked about me. But when we get to a point until we accept that you're fearfully and you're wonderfully made, when we get to the point until we accept that he broke the mold when he made me, when we get to the point that we accept that he understood who I was while I was yet in my mother's womb, and he was moving me together to create me to be the special person I am, that's when you know. But I want to thank everybody who was on the panel tonight. We've got to bring you back because we have to talk about the love and how you have to love yourself in order to be authentic and in order to be vulnerable. And then we want to indulge into, why do you think people in the world are killing in society? Is it because they have no love for themselves?
Mhm.
If they're not vulnerable, they have nobody to talk to. So I want to thank you, you, and you. I'm so excited. I'm so encouraged with everything that has been said on tonight. You guys have been simply fabulous on tonight. Once again, my name is Patrice. I am from Teardrops Liquid Language of the Heart, and we are in the season of vulnerability. Once again, I thank everyone for listening, and have a spectacular night. See you on the next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Enjoy.
Good night.